At 30,000 feet, everything suddenly changed. One moment, Southwest Flight 138, was just another routine flight with 147 people on board. The next, there was a deafening explosion from the left engine, a violent shock through the aircraft, and a section of the fuselage tearing open like it had been punched from the inside out. A window was shattered. The cabin pressure collapsed in an instant. Oxygen masks dropped as the aircraft began a rapid, uncontrolled descent. And in that chaos, a passenger was pulled toward the opening, partially sucked out of the aircraft before others managed to pull her back inside. She would not survive. Up front in the cockpit, Captain Tammie Jo Shults was already moving through a situation most pilots only train for in theory, never in reality. She was 56 years old, a former U.S. Navy fighter pilot, one of the early women to fly combat jets, someone who had once operated in environments shaped by Cold War tension and Soviet missile threats. But none of that mattered in the way people might assume. What mattered now was something far simpler. Control the airplane, keep it flying, bring everyone home if it was still possible. Her voice over the radio didn't break. Engine severe damage, engine failure, she told air traffic control, as if reporting something difficult but still contained. Behind those words, the situation was anything but contained. The aircraft was damaged, depressurized, and descending fast toward Philadelphia International Airport. Inside the cabin, passengers were fighting panic, confusion, and the shock of what had just happened. But in the cockpit, Shults kept working through the checklist of survival: altitude, speed, direction, coordination. Every second mattered, but her tone stayed level, almost unnervingly calm. On the ground, controllers quickly realized this was not a standard emergency. She requested medical teams to be ready. Injuries were confirmed on board. When asked if the aircraft was on fire, her answer cut through the noise with cold clarity. No, it's not on fire, but part of it's missing. That single detail captured everything. This wasn't an engine failure in the usual sense. Something had violently broken apart in flight, and the aircraft was still holding together only by the thin margins of engineering and luck. As the plane rushed toward Philadelphia, Shults guided it down, stabilizing what she could, refusing to let the situation spiral further than it already had. Every instruction she gave was quiet, precise, almost detached, like distance itself was the only thing holding the cockpit together. Then finally, the runway came into view. She brought the aircraft in and landed it. Not perfectly, not gently, but safely enough that it stopped on the ground with fire trucks already waiting. "We're going to stop right here by the fire trucks," she said over the radio, the tension finally beginning to release. Inside the cabin, relief didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves, shock first, then disbelief, then the realization that the worst possible outcome had been avoided for most of the people on board. After landing, Shults didn't stay isolated in the cockpit. She reportedly walked through the aircraft herself, checking on passengers, making sure people were alive, conscious, accounted for, still operating in the same calm mode that had carried her through the emergency. Passengers later described her presence as almost impossible to reconcile with what had just happened. Calm, focused, controlled, as if she had been flying through turbulence rather than a mid-air structural failure that killed a passenger and left a hole in the aircraft. But for Shults, it was something simpler in her own words. She later described the crew as just doing their jobs. Nothing more, nothing less. And yet, for everyone else on board, and for everyone who would later hear the cockpit recordings, one fact stood out above all others. In the middle of catastrophic failure at altitude, when the aircraft itself was literally torn open, the person speaking to them over the radio never sounded like she was losing control even for a second. Just another voice, steady, focused, guiding a broken airplane back to the ground.